Notice with me how the Son is going to play a certain role for us in the story. And that role is that the Son is a very accurate revealer of the plant. It's a very accurate revealer of the nature of the soil, or to put it another way, it's a very accurate revealer of a profession of faith. So the Son we're going to see in the parable represents, Jesus has already explained it to us, is going to represent tribulation and persecution. And that tribulation, that persecution, or to use it in the words of the parable, the Son reveals the character of the profession of faith, or reveals the nature of the faith. It's a very accurate revealer of that. So think with just how often we see this sort of thing, not only in our life around us, but think how often we see this in the Scriptures. How it is that the Son of someone's life reveals the faith that's already present or not present at all. Think about, for example, Ruth. Story of Ruth, Ruth chapter 1. Remember Naomi? Naomi, who has left her home of Bethlehem because of the famine, and she goes to Moab. And in Moab, she loses her husband and her 2 sons. And how does Naomi respond to that? She responds by saying, when she comes back to Bethlehem, don't call me Naomi anymore. Call me Marah. Why? Because the Lord has been very bitter to me. My mouth is full of the bitterness of how God has treated me. Now compare that, by comparison, to the response of Job, who experiences similar son in his life. In fact, we could say much stronger son. He not only loses his children, he loses his home, he loses his crops, he loses his flocks, he loses his health. And compare his response. His response is one to say, naked I came into this world, naked I'll leave. The Lord gives, the Lord takes away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. So you see how the same son, or at least a very similar son, brings out or draws out of 2 different people 2 different reactions, and by so doing, it reveals the faith or the nature of the faith or the nature of the profession of faith that's present in the person. Think with me of so many other examples. Think of Abraham. We're told in Genesis chapter 22 that God tested Abraham. How did he test Abraham? Abraham, you know that child of promise? You know the one that you've been waiting for more than a decade? You know the one on whom all of my promises to you hinge? Take him up to the mountain and kill him. And we're told specifically that God is testing Abraham there. The writer to the Hebrews says this, by faith Abraham, when he was tested, what did he do? Offered up his son Isaac, thereby proving the nature or the character of the faith that was in his heart. Or 1 Peter chapter 1 and verse 7. Peter says, so that the tested genuineness of your faith, more precious than gold that perishes, though it's tested by fire, may be found. You see, the showing may be found to result in praise and glory and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. You see, there's a testing of faith, and then there's a result. The result is that you see, you perceive, you understand the nature, the character of the faith that's present. Or James chapter 1, verses 2 and 3, count it all joy, my brothers, when you encounter trials of various kinds, knowing that the testing of your faith produces steadfastness. There is a type of faith that's when it's tested, when the sun comes up, it produces steadfastness. There's another type of faith, so to speak, air quotes, that when that's tested, it doesn't produce steadfastness. It produces something else. Or later on in verse 12, James says, blessed is the man who remains steadfast under trial, for when he has stood the test, he will receive the crown of life. You see how there's a demonstration there, a revealing of the nature of the faith that's within the person. So the first takeaway is this. Our Lord desires for every professor of faith, and by professor, don't think college professor, think one who professes. Everyone who professes, every professor of faith, our Lord desires that everyone knows the genuineness or the disingenuineness of the faith they profess. God is the one who causes the sun to rise, the literal sun and the metaphorical sun, right? The metaphorical sun, which represents the tribulation and the persecution, as well as the literal sun that's lighting the sky right now. God is the one who causes that to rise. And so God is the one who causes to rise the metaphorical sun in the parable that serves the purpose of revealing the nature or the character of the profession of faith that the plant or the person is making. And God does that because He doesn't desire for anyone who professes faith to not clearly understand the nature of the faith that they profess. 3 soils in the passage are professing a type of faith. And God is going to cause His sun to shine on all 3 of them, clearly revealing to them and to everyone else the nature of that faith. God does not want anyone to stand before Him on that day and say to Him, I really thought, all those years, I really thought that faith that I had was genuine. I'm just now learning that faith wasn't real. God doesn't want that. So His Son will expose, S-U-N, will demonstrate, reveal the character or the nature of the faith of everyone who professes that faith. Once you profess faith, the sun's coming up. As soon as you profess that faith, the sun is coming up, and that sun is coming up to show you the genuineness or the disingenuineness of that faith.